Hey folks, let's take a look at how to get vMotion deployed in this lab. I see quite a few of you. Eugene, for example, was asking about how to get that set up. Now we actually have a number of options here, but the important thing is, of course, that we don't only set it up on these two nested hosts, but we also get it set up on the physical host so we can actually migrate something down between the physical and nested hosts. Now, if we go into the first host configure, we want to go to VM kernel adapters. Then today we just have this one right here. Well, let's go and edit that. If we just wanted to do this quick and dirty, I could just go to each of the three hosts and enable vMotion. That would be sufficient. It would work. But in the real world, you would not want to mix and match vMotion and management traffic typically. It would not be recommended. So how can we solve that? Well, why don't we take these hosts and we'll put those in maintenance mode. And what we basically will want to do is to set up a separate network that we'll use for that. We could also just set up additional VM kernel adapters here. Depends a little bit on your exact network. So why don't we try and set it up on a separate switch? In the ideal world, you would have separate network adapters, ideally going to a separate network so you don't have some overlap. In this example here, we have 10 gig adapters. If you have 10 gig, well, then most likely it's realistic to go and mix and match traffic. So then you could actually go and set it up. But anyway, why don't we set up an extra switch? That way we sort of have it separated out a little bit and you get a feel for how to go and set it up. So what we could do here is we say we want a new VM kernel adapter. We want a new switch. I'm just going to leave it at the default MTU of 1500. Then we need some adapters. Well, in this case, I'm actually not going to assign any because it's all nested. But in the real world, of course, you would want to assign minimum one, potentially even two. It depends on redundancy. If this was set up with real physical servers, you would want to ideally have two physical NICs going to two separate switches. If they're just going to the same, you don't need two, right? But we're looking for redundancy options here. Okay, then we could call this VMK vMotion 1. And we will want to make sure that we put the checkbox here that we can use this for vMotion. That's a good idea. Next. Okay, then we need some static TCP/IP. So then the big question, of course, is which network should we use here? Let's say 192.16. We used .2 for the vMotion stuff. So why don't we use 1? And in this case here, we could use .11 for host number 1. Or we could try and follow the system from before. So biascasing, we call the first one 21. So we could do the same here, just to try and keep some sort of consistency. Oh, wait. This is the original one here, yeah? So not like that. Let's keep it as 11 instead, because it's the physical box we're talking about here. Finish. Okay, so then we see we have to switch down here. Now, don't forget, in the real world, you want to keep this as rejected, but because we're doing nested virtualization here, I'm going to set this to accept. And we could go and set up one more. Oops, let's see here. Yeah, VM kernel adapter, existing switch. Last one, 5. Next. And we'll call VMK vMotion 2. And again, we want to use it for vMotion. Okay. And we could go through this whole visit here, but why don't we try and keep it a little bit simple so far? And we'll just set up with the one NIC here on this host because again, there's no physical adapters here. If we go down to the two nested hosts, we'll say add networking. Now, before we can actually go and do that, we need some NICs here. So that's something to keep in mind. So we'll go to the first nested host, and we want at least one network adapter. We could also do with 2. So here we have the new one. Now the issue here is we don't actually have any group for that to be connected to. So we need to go back again to the physical host. So we need a port group, and we'll call it, it's going to be on switch 5, PG, and we can call it vMotion. Next, finish. And there we go. Because now we have a target that we can actually assign here. Okay, so we'll go back again and say add network adapter. And we'll say PG vMotion. And if we wanted to do 2, and why not? Yeah, so we'll set up some proper redundancy down on the nested hosts. We don't need it since it's nested, but I just want to show you how to actually do that correctly. Just confirm VMXnet tree, all is good. Then we'll continue to the next one. Set up the same network adapter. We can just add both of them at the same time. Browse vMotion. And we'll pick vMotion again. We can sort of just double check everything's VMXnet tree. If we didn't go here, then hopefully if we do a refresh, we can see some more NICs, because so far we had the one sort of production network, the one that we're using for ESXi, but we do need those extra NICs to actually show up. So I think what we're going to do here is basically go and do a reboot here. Just for simplicity purposes, since we don't have anything running there yet. And we could, of course, go and take a look. See? Oh, let's do a web console instead. Okay, so that's booting up pretty fast. Do web console again. All right. Thankfully, these nested hosts boot up very, very quickly. And you can see I actually installed these as a 7 update 2 when I reinstalled them anyway. In the last videos, we were running 7.01, but should be fine. We already had one video where we saw how to update to update 1, so that should be pretty much the same process for update 2. Okay, let's see. I think we're getting very close here. All right, so this one seems to be good. The one's taking a little bit longer, but that's okay. Normally it should connect by itself, but we can try and do a reconnect here just to speed up the process slightly. And there we go, the other one's ready as well. And we can see it's actually already starting to pop up here now, so everything's all well. Oh, it was faster than me. So let's hide that. Okay, so let's go and take a look and see. Now we have our 2 new physical NICs. See them on both of the hosts. So let's set up a additional switch here on these hosts, and let's start with host number 211. So we'll say at networking, and we want a VM kernel adapter, new switch, next. And here we basically want to add both of these NICs in to the switch. And then we'll call this VMK, vMotion 1 again. And this one will give it 172.16.1.21. subnet mask. Finish. Give it a chance to pop up. Then we'll go down here, say we want another VM kernel adapter on switch number 2, called VMK vMotion number 2. Again, we'll put that checkbox here, call 172.16.1.22. Finish. Okay, so these are here, but there is something that we need to go and adjust. Now, when it comes to teaming and failover, we basically want to do an override. And for adapter number 1 here, VMK vMotion 1, we only want one active NIC, the other one is standby. Click OK. Then we'll go and edit the opposing one, number 2, and set it in the reverse order so that number 2 is standby and number 3 is active. Now, you may remember from when we did the ESXi setup that if you want to have multiples, then we need just one active, multiple unused. But with vMotion, it's different. So let's go to the second one. And we have the ESXi here. So we'll have to add the new switch. Okay, VM kernel adapter, new switch. Add both of the NICs all in one go. Next, VMK vMotion 1, call vMotion. So this one will be 1.31. Next, finish. Okay, so we have that one. So we'll click add again, another VM kernel, still switch number 2, VMK vMotion number 2. We'll remember to check the box. 172.16.1.32. Set up our subnet mask here. Finish. Then, just like before, we'll remember to go and do the teaming change to override. Set 1 for active for standby. And why was it unused? Because if number 2 fails, this IP is still going to be tried to be used. So now we'll basically send both IPs via the one NIC, but it's better. Otherwise, we'll start to see some fails, which is of course not in our interest. So we'll go down here as well. And this time we'll put number 2 down. Give it a chance to update. Okay. So now everything should be set up. You can have one with just one, that's okay. It doesn't have to be that they're all exactly the same. Exit maintenance mode. Exit maintenance mode. So let's say we wanted to migrate DC01. Well, we could say migrate, change compute resource only. That's what we call a standard vMotion essentially. So click next. You can see, okay, where can I sort of move it? Well, we have a bit of a issue here because see, I don't really have any other compute resources that I can move it to. What if we said we want to change compute and storage? Well, then we can suddenly start to move down here. Now, that's partially because these are in different clusters here. And let's see here. Oh, it's a little bit unhappy. So I think we might have to power it off and sort of manually migrate it, which is completely okay, of course. It seems to be a little bit unhappy here. Let's see here. What is it? It's on the nested host because we don't have any NICs, physical NICs on that network. So what we'll do here is we'll shut this one down nicely. Okay, which should be pretty fast. Okay, so we have a couple of things that we basically need to try and do now. Let's see if it will let us do it in this instance here. So now we can select this host here. Now, notice here, if I pick just here, I can only pick this one host because, well, it has to be shared storage, but I don't have shared storage here technically. We do have the Starwind. So for this move, we're going to say change both compute and storage. So first, I'm going to pick a host down in this nested setup. And then I'm going to say I want to change it to this storage that we have down there. Keep. Okay. And oh, we see some warning here. It wants to use this PG production. That's not available down there, so I could put it on a different network. What would be a better option is to cancel out. Go down here, find the network, and essentially change the name so that it has the same name. Now in the new setup, I did actually call it PG production. Previously, it was just called production. You can sort of adjust if you want or continue with the old name. Now don't forget to also do this on the second host. So make sure the names match. All right, then we can go back once again. You should migrate. We want to change host and data store. We expand here, we pick a nested host. There's only one data store option, so we continue. Now we can see the network check works out. Next, finish. And if we open up here, we can actually sort of see the migration start to take place. As we can see, the domain controller has finally finished getting copied. So I'm gonna sort of minimize this for the moment. Now, why don't we first of all just make sure that we can actually power it on. That's always a very good start. We can see it's on the 211 host, but let's just make sure everything is still functional. Takes a moment to power on. Also a good way to sort of just test that all of the nested ESXi networking and so on is actually completely functional. And don't forget, now it's booting from the Starwind storage, and not to say that there's anything wrong with the Starwind storage, but it is a level deeper down, nested hosts and stuff like that. So the power on time for the machine here is going to expectedly be a little bit longer than it would have taken sort of on the physical layer. Nothing wrong with that at all. Now, while it's actually sort of starting up already here, it should be almost ready. We can already go back and take a look. So if we say migrate here, this time we just want to only change the compute resource. We can see it's already, well, we knew it was already running on host 211 because it was there already. And we basically are interested in moving it over to 212. But let's go and take a look here. Let's see. Yeah, it's definitely starting up. Well, why don't we just go and kick this off right now? We can see the source network is there, the destination network is available. That's why it was important we did that a little bit earlier. Next, should we schedule it? Yeah, that's typically the recommended version here. Finish. And we can go down and see. Reconfiguring the migration. Should be fairly rapid. And now it's already running on host 212. Because I did that, the console was not so happy, but we can immediately open it up on the other side. Now, of course, we just want to make sure everything's functional here. So I'm going to give this machine a little bit of time to actually go and start up. And then we'll give the network a little test. But essentially, everything we've done now is get the vMotion set up on these VM kernel ports. In this example, I've done it a little bit of a slightly more complicated way, but what you could do, especially with 1 gig networking, if you wanted redundancy, or if you're on 10 gig and you want redundancy again, you definitely want the same, but then you might be using these NICs for multiple services. Okay, we can see the host is finally up and running. So I'll go ahead and log in just to make sure everything is okay. And a test we could do. What could we try out? Let's just see here. Open up a command prompt. So we could say ping 192.2.1 pfSense. Oh, that's not working. Okay. Well, that's not the best. Just to see. Yeah, that's also not working. Maybe something else. No. So the network does not appear to be working, which is of course not exactly fantastic. So let's go and take a look and see, can we figure out what's gone wrong here? So we want to go take a look at the switch here. And we see promiscuous is enabled. Should be fine down here as well. Let's take a look. Yeah. Okay. So that is a good question. Why could it be not working? So let's see here. It's on host number 2. And we see it's on this PG production, which is on this VMware 0. So if we go to this host and we take a look, see 0 is PG production. So that should be fine. And pfSense, well, we had configured already, but we can see also PG production. So that's a little bit of a curious one. Well, interesting. Why don't we just for fun, you can see that the vMotion works. Can move it back to the first one just to see if there is a small difference. There shouldn't be, but it's always good just to get a little bit of troubleshooting here as we're doing this on the fly. Then we also know everything works on both sides. So closing that window and console again. Let's try the same. Okay, so that does not work. Reachable. Let's go and open the network. Change adapter. So it's definitely connected, and we seem to have the right IP set up. So that's great. So I think what we'll have to do is basically take a look through the setup here. So if we go up to the host again and just do a little final inspection here just to see. So we did have promiscuous mode on, but we also have these MAC address changes and forge transmit. So let's again make sure that these are set to accept. And we may as well shift through these switches here just to make sure everything's, yeah, so we'll get everything set up. So it's all prepared for later on. And this should be, yeah, that's all set up fine. And this one, yep. And we have vMotion traffic. It's also good, so it was only that one at the top. Let's try and do a little test again. And now we can see it works. We could even try and ping something on the other side. That also works. So there we have it. vMotion all set up and functional. And in a later video, we could, of course, start setting up some DRS, the distributed resource scheduler that will do automatic migrations. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. Would love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future videos, please let me know as well. And I hope to see you in the next video.